one of my favorite tech tools. If you are familiar with Pear Deck already, awesome. If you are not, you're in for a treat. It's an amazing tool that can help you with collaboration and with a little bit of a formative assessment work with your students. So here are your options here as we get ready to dive in using the Pear Deck, right? So option one, keeping Zoom open on your computer and then signing on to Pear Deck from your smartphone. Probably one of the easier options, especially for us adult learners, because it's easy. It's right here, right? So you'll go to joinpd.com, and then once I get the code up on the screen, you're going to be able to enter that code in, and you will have access to your Pear Deck. Option two is to keep Zoom open on your computer screen here, and then make sure if you hit escape in the top left-hand corner of your keyboard, you'll be able to go to a new internet browser tab, and you can go to the direct link that way, and I will post that in the chat for you. And then option three, if you're like, Ashley, listen, I'm not that comfortable with technology, or Ashley, listen, I'm on my phone. Totally fine. Feel free to answer questions in the chat as we go along, or if you're wanting to be a risk taker, please take yourself off mute. Love to hear from you that way. So I'm going to go ahead and I am going to get my Pear Deck logged in. I'm going to get that code for you, and I'm going to put it in the chat. All right. Oh, goodness. See, perfect example is sometimes technology doesn't want us to do what it wants to do. So if you are one of those people that wants to log in on a internet browser, all you have to do is go to joinpd.com, and I will give you the code here in just a second. Megan, thank you. That is actually a pull floaty from my classroom that I had, and my kids loved it. So I knew I had to make sure it came home with me, and now it's in my home office. It's always a great conversation starter, that one. All right, we're up and running. So I'm going to take the link. I'm going to post it in the chat for you. You can join by that direct link, or if you'd like, you can go to joinpd.com and then type in the code DKCCSY. All right. Awesome. I already see one person's already in and connected. Reminder, if you are someone that's not as comfortable with Pear Deck, you're like, Ashley, I'm okay. Feel free to interact with us in the chat. I'd love to hear from you. So Pear Deck is an awesome tool if you're not familiar with it to increase engagement in your slides presentation. We use it often here at Link with our adult learners. It is a fantastic way to get data while also engaging students in your content and the lesson that you are sharing with them. So at any time, if you get kicked out of the Pear Deck presentation, that is okay. I will have the link there for you in the chat. And I'm sure Kim will also repost it for you if you need it. And then the code will always be in the top right-hand corner here for you in case you walk back in. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Your first question on your end, your side of the Pear Deck presentation, you're going to see an option for this slide to drag and show me how you're feeling today. I know Jason touched a little bit on this. We here at Link, we value connection over content or connection before content, and we want to make sure that we're checking in just like we would want to do with our students. Our Link mascot is a llama, so we have our llama here, and we have some different versions, right? I'm going to go ahead and let's see.
Ashley, did you know you're not presenting? Did you mean not to present or not present?
Oh, Amber, thank you. You should see it on your end.
Okay, just double checking because you had mentioned if there were some people who couldn't join in or something like that, they'd be able to follow along. So I wasn't sure if you wanted to do that or not.
Yeah. Let me see. Kim, would you mind giving me the permission to be able to share again? It looks like it's disabled.
Give me 2 seconds. I gotta find you. Your host now.
Perfect. Thanks, Kim. So, also too, just a reminder, guys, if you wouldn't mind staying on mute, that would be super, super helpful for us, just so we can eliminate any kind of like background noise that we may have. Thank you, Kim. There we go. And thank you, Amber. Sorry about that. Again, perfect example when our tech is just not wanting to do what we want to do, right? So here we have on your end, you should see, if you are in the Pear Deck presentation, you should see an icon. You should be able to drag and drop it, be able to tell me how you're feeling. And then I can go in, I can show responses. So it's looking like most people, they're feeling cool in the blue. That's one of our most popular options. Everyone loves the hair. The hair is always the #1 factor for that choice. One person's super happy in the green. No friends are gloomy today. That's good. Awesome. So this is just one way. Pear Deck, you can use Pear Deck to check in with your students. I love this. People usually get a kick out of the llamas and their facial expressions. So thank you guys for sharing that. I appreciate that. So today we're going to be talking about key strategies for digital collaboration, right? What that looks like, some tools that you can use to help you with that. We're going to do some tinker time. I have some awesome resources for you in the form of a Bitmoji classroom resource rooms, right? It's going to be awesome. And then we'll talk about next steps. So today you're going to be exploring tools and strategies to build student collaboration and connectivity. You may have heard Jason talk about connectivity earlier. It's part of our PAC framework, right? And help develop a plan for student collaboration, whether it's in the hybrid classroom, fully remote, or in some instances, I know we may have some folks that are trickling back into being face-to-face. All right, so let's get into some reflect time. Here at Link, we value the process reflect, tinker, grow. We have a platform called Link Spring where teachers are able to go in and they can do professional development at their own pace, right? Giving them their own agency and autonomy there. We also make sure that in our cycles that we do, we encourage the reflection process because it allows teachers to take stock of their current levels of understanding, what they know, what they don't know, right? We'll get into tinker in a little bit where you get to explore, you get to find a tool or a practice that works best for you. And
You guys are all fucking killing me.
You actually get to plan about putting it into action, and then you can do the grow section where you come back and you do some reflection on how that went. Did it go well? Did it not go well? And everything like that.
I got a Zoom link for you right now that I'm trying to copy paste.
I'm gonna make sure everyone is muted. Awesome. Okay. All right. So your first Pear Deck question, what did student collaboration look like in your classroom pre-COVID-19? What did student collaboration look like in your classroom pre-COVID-19? If you're just joining us, welcome first and foremost. I'm going to put a link in the chat for you. That is a link to our Pear Deck presentation, which what you see on our screen. Feel free to follow along with us there, or you can just watch and hang out here and answer in the chat. Either one works. All right, it looks like I got 10 out of 14 people responding. Let's see, let's check it out. Connie's saying a lot of discourse, right? Group problem solving. Awesome. My class was set up in groups of 4. Students work in partners and groups, okay. Small group presentations, love that. Using chart paper to write observations or answers. My students loved creating their own anchor charts. They love that. Blogging, round robin, ooh, blogging. That's a great way to showcase student thoughts. I had tables with 2 students at a table, so they had a math or computer science buddy. They could help or ask each other for help when they needed or bounce ideas off of each other. Yes. That's awesome. Students working in groups, discourse, problem solving. Yes, I was a math teacher before I came out of the classroom this past spring, and my students are always so surprised when I tell them, yes, this is math class. However, you're going to do a lot of conversating, and you are also going to practice writing out your thought process around how you solved your problem. And they're always just mind blown. Gallery walks, sticky notes, yes. Connie, great question. So since I am the facilitator of this Pear Deck, only I can see the responses. You guys can see them here on the Zoom screen, but when you are doing Pear Deck with your students, you can see responses unless, only you can, unless you showcase them on the screen just like I did. So all the responses are anonymous, but if you go into the teacher dashboard on your side, you'll be able to see who responded what on your end. So you should be able to keep track of it that way. But as you are a student in this one, only I can see the responses. And share them on the screen, of course, because sharing is caring. Sitting on the floor next to each other, working together through something. Awesome. Lots of movement. I love that. Great, you guys. Amber said you can also choose what responses to show. Yeah, they have varying grid layouts, Amber, here on Pear Deck. This is the grid view where I can see everyone at one time. And then they also have a list view where you can choose which responses to highlight. And of course, if I want them all to go away, boom, hide responses. And now we're back. It's one of the cool things about Pear Deck. So you may have heard Jason talk about this earlier. This is our pack. I think of it kind of as an umbrella, right? We have the umbrella of personalization, and then we have underneath it agency, authenticity, connectivity, and creativity. Today, we're mainly going to be focusing on this connectivity piece. And when I always talk to my teachers about the pack, I always remind them it's not that all of them have to come together at one singular time. In order for personalization to happen, you can take small steps and choose one at a time to focus or combine some of them. And all of these, when you're using them either all together or interchangeably, right? All of these help to inform data-driven decision-making, which thus leads to our big umbrella of personalization. So today we're going to be focusing on connectivity, so collaborating with peers and experts. My friends that are just coming in the chat for you, if you'd like to join our Pear Deck presentation, there's a link there for you. You can click it, and you can be here with us in the Pear Deck. If not, feel free to just watch along with us on our screen. So setting norms and expectations, right? Just like we're being in the face-to-face brick and mortar space, we would want to set expectations and norms around what's going to happen in the collaborative space. How are they going to work with others? What is the expectations for that? So we want to make sure that we are establishing, you know, how are they going to have the discourse? What are the processes around if they're using a Padlet, for example, what's going to be the process of responding to someone on Padlet? What's going to be the process of, you know, making their initial post on Padlet, right? So we want to make sure, just like we would in the classroom, making sure that we are identifying and setting norms and expectations so that we can now take the teacher as being the lead lecturer, right? And we can now give that option and give that opportunity to our students to become autonomous, right? Here at Link, we call that giving them agency. How can we give our students agency in making sure that they're the ones in charge, not only of their learning, but how they're interacting and cohabitating with their peers in the digital space? Checking in. So on your Pear Deck, if you are in it with us, what tools, if any, have you used in the past with your students to encourage digital collaboration? So this is going to be a typing response. You'll be able to type in your Pear Deck and I'll be able to see it in real time. Ooh, Connie, great question. Connie said some teachers are having issues with high school students adhering to the expectations, and despite using tools that facilitate the connections and group interaction, students are not engaging. Any idea on how to rectify? So great question. I would, you know, make sure, one, I've had a lot of teachers that have been really successful with rubrics, right? And having students put their voice into designing and creating the actual rubric. One, you know, that holds accountability for, you know, teacher to student, but the students now have had a say and have had a voice in creating that rubric or creating those norms, creating those expectations. So that could be a good idea to be like, hey, like, we're going to have a conversation because you had a voice in designing this, and I really want to make sure that you are able to engage in a way that works for you. So if there's something that maybe we need to audit and look at and change, that needs to be a conversation that needs to be had. But I've had a lot of teachers be successful in creating those rubrics, but having their students' voice involved in that process as well. Yeah, absolutely. So let's take a look. Edpuzzle, Flipgrid, two of my favorites. Plickers, of course, yeah, absolutely. Plickers can do a lot of stuff, can lead to a lot of stuff, right? Google Slides, Prezi, Canvas, right? Discussion boards, Jamboards, Padlets. As an elementary music teacher, I struggle with this. Well, hopefully we can get you some tools today that you can use with your students. And I know, fun fact, Pear Deck just came out with some templates, some pre-made templates for our arts educators and for our specials educators as well. Julie in the chat was saying Jamboards. Yeah, absolutely. Sharing Google Docs. Strategies while in Hangouts, Nearpod and Jamboard. Padlet for students to post, but I don't get a lot of collaboration yet because most can't type. Yeah. Let me see. This one hiding over here. Students participate in co-creating Google Slides to represent their learning. Absolutely. That's a great one. Awesome. So you guys have already had, it looks like, some exposure. We're going to talk about a lot of these today, and in the resource room document that I'm going to give you, hopefully you'll find one in there that works best for you, so that during Tinker Time you'll be able to explore a little bit. So here are some of the ones you've already seen, you've probably already mentioned. You're like, Ashley, I've tinkered, I know this. So hopefully if that's the case for you, you can find a new and innovative way to use that platform today. So of course we have Flipgrid, Padlet, Google Suite, Microsoft Office 365, Google Hangouts, Microsoft Teams, Zoom, right? A lot of the things that we're probably already using, but hopefully we can find a new and novel way to use them. So Flipgrid, we here at Link, we love Flipgrid. They just came out with some updates where now your students can blur out their face, which is awesome, you know, for privacy reasons. But they're still able to contribute and still able to connect with their peers. Flipgrid is an awesome way to create videos. Students can personalize them with like little stickers and icons. My kids always loved that. And they can respond to the videos of their peers. Or if you are creating a Flipgrid yourself of a specific topic and you want them to respond to your Flipgrid, they can do that too. But students have always really enjoyed being able to, one, create their own videos. They love being content creators, right? And also, you know, making it personable while able to still connect with their peers as well. Padlet. Padlet is one of my favorite ways to take discussion and make it visual, right? So if you are not familiar with Padlet, Padlet allows for multimedia way of collaborating and connecting, right? I kind of think of it as like a social media newsfeed almost, right? You can create topics, which is what you see here at the top. And students can respond in various ways. They can post a link to a website. They can respond via video, via message. They can type out their answer and their response, right? They can upload things like pictures. They can do a screen recording. They can draw. They can doodle. But Padlet is an excellent way to pose and create discussion topics and allow your students to kind of collaborate and integrate other ways of demonstrating their learning. So Megan was saying, which one would be better? So Megan, that's a great question. Flipgrid is free, completely. Padlet, with Padlet, you get 3 free Padlets. Flipgrid doesn't allow you to do as much as Padlet, but with Flipgrid, I mean, if you're comfortable and your students are comfortable with creating video responses, Flipgrid's awesome. If you ever want to go in and explore Padlet, awesome. But again, you get 3 free Padlets before you have to upgrade. But I know a lot of teachers have always reused old Padlets to kind of bypass that that little thing. But it's totally up to you and what you and your students are most comfortable with. So Google or Microsoft tools, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. I feel like most of us hopefully are pretty familiar with G Suite for Education, so GAFE, right? Google Docs, Google Drive, Slides, which is what you're seeing right now, what I created my presentation with, and then Microsoft 365, right? So Microsoft Word, Excel, things like that. They allow you to have your students collaborate, right? Whether it be on a doc, whether I'm being slides. If you can't tell, I'm more of a G Suite person, right? So being able to have them collaborate in that way is also another viable option. I know I had a ton of people mention earlier, they have their students collaborating on Google Slides or Google Docs, which is awesome. That's always, you know, a great point for students, especially if they're already familiar with GAFE or G Suite. Great place to start. Video conferencing, some of my other favorites. By the way, I know we're on Zoom, but Google Meet, if you are a Google Meet school, if your school is requiring you to use Google Meet, fun fact, Google Meet is coming out with a lot of features that we've used here in Zoom, like breakout rooms, things like that. So that you'll be able to go in and actually do some of the same things you already do here in Zoom, but you'll be able to do them in Google Meet as well. So being able to take polls, ask questions, do breakout rooms, take attendance too, I've heard is also coming out. But using video conferencing is a great way to meet with small groups, right? Or even just set up, small groups for, I know some people mentioned earlier, small group projects, right? Just being able to make sure that you're giving them a designated space where they can actually go and they can actually meet, so that they can be still part of that process. Connie was saying, do you know if there'll be a price tag associated with Meet updates? Connie, I'm not sure. I don't think so. If your school is a GAFE school, right? So G Suite for Education, where you can go in and maybe your school has a Google email address. Usually they're integrated and they're free with that. But I'm not sure. I don't think so. That's a great question.
Our admin said that they're going to be updating in October, and they're usually just automatically free. If we so our school in Clark County School District, we use Google, so it wouldn't be an extra cost.
That's a great point. So they're doing something called a rollout of these updates, where it's not all coming out at the same time. I have a graphic somewhere, and it describes what. They just updated the control features, right? Moderator, being able to mute students. And then, of course, I think by the end of October, they're coming out with breakout rooms and polling and something else. But the goal for them, I think, is by the end of the year, being able to have all of these features available for teachers so that you can use them just like you would use for Zoom. Yeah, okay, so not free. Yep, if you're a GAFE school, you should have them integrated seamlessly with no pay for them, but they may be some premium features otherwise. Online discussions. So we've already talked about Flipgrid and Padlet. Great way to do discussions, either visually, if your students are like, I really love being able to create videos. Awesome, love it, right? If you are, I know my social studies and my English teachers usually love Padlet, but I've used Padlet with my math. I'm a former math teacher. So my students really love to be able to do things like showcase their learning, where they would be able to write out their problem, take a picture of it, boom, post it to the Padlet, right? And then of course you always have Google Classroom or another platform like Seesaw, where you can go in, you can actually make a discussion post and you can have students respond within that post. So those two options, again, if you use those two platforms, I'm pretty sure on platforms like Canvas and Schoology as well, you can do the same exact thing, where you can post a discussion topic, have your students respond in there. Online discussions, right? We've talked a lot about, making sure we're setting norms and expectations. We're the same thing, if we're giving our students guidelines in the face-to-face, the brick and mortar environment, right? We want to make sure we're upholding that in the virtual realm. So with this, I've had a lot of teachers, again, be successful with rubrics. It allows students to see exactly what they need to be doing, what they need to be hitting on, although some people can find rubrics a little bit hindering. So it's really up to you and your teaching style and really knowing your students. You know your students best, right? So it allows them to have clear guidelines and clear expectations about, what is expected of them during that online discussion portion. This is probably one of my favorite things to do with my kids. Show them an example of a good discussion post and one that's not good at all. Usually I get some giggles from the bad discussion post. And with my kids, they really loved being able to explain to me why the bad discussion post is a bad discussion post, right? So with good discussion posts, you can go over the guidelines of why maybe that is a great discussion post. They included specific evidence. They gave constructive feedback, right? And then the bad discussion posts, wrong, horrible, didn't like it at all, you didn't do X, Y, and Z. But really allowing your students to see an example and then really going in and discovering, why was this a good discussion post? why was this a bad discussion post and what will we do to fix it? My students really love the challenge of being able to tell me what was wrong and be able to then tell me, okay, well, Ms. Clark, this is how I would fix it, right? So being able to show that for them is also equally as important. Discussion strategies continued. So make sure we have things set up for participation in behavior, making sure that if students have questions, they either are doing a little bit of annotating, while that's happening so that they can bring up their questions, and or making sure that they are able to create their own questions in order to ask them later. My students always came up with like very interesting questions that wouldn't have necessarily thought of. So it was great for them to kind of put the ball in their court to see what they would come up with. Hosting small group meetings, and then asking the students to do a self-assessment of their own participation, right? So being able to look at it, did I do X, Y, and Z? Or during my discussion post, was my post able to cover X, Y, and Z? And 9 times out of 10, your students are able to figure out what they did, what went well, and identify some things that they would maybe change up in the next time, right? So being able to have those clear and concise expectations for them, while also giving them the opportunity, if they so choose, to have input and buy into that expectation as well. So now we're going to talk about some ideas around what you can actually do to enhance a discussion experience, right? So in teams or pairs, my kids love this. It was called error analysis, right? I would give them a problem, didn't tell them what was wrong with the problem. They literally had to go through, like a good mathematician would, go through and solve the problem, and then write out a detailed explanation about why the problem is incorrect and what the student or the teacher actually needed to do to make sure that the next time they do the problem, that the problem is right? My kids were very creative when they did this. They would make poster boards, they would post out the problem, they would identify, color code. They got really into it. It doesn't have to be anything elaborate like that, but any kind of error analysis where you can go through and have them identify the mistake that was made and how they can fix it is always an awesome experience for them. Being able to have student teachers of sorts, right? I found sometimes my students were able to connect and understand a peer sometimes better than me. So I would have some student teachers in my classroom, and they would always volunteer themselves. It wasn't something that it was expected or forced upon them, but if they wanted to, if they had a great idea of how to go around problem solving, or if they had a great explanation, I would have them either share them with the class or make sure they're sharing it with their peers, right? And then, of course, another one is ask 3 before me. Don't always come to me first. Again, sometimes your peers have better explanations or better points than I do. So ask your students or your peers before they ask the teacher. A little bit of role playing. I like to call it practiced perspectives, where they can understand the perspective of somebody else and be able to respond. Maybe if you're doing a novel study, respond to questions how a certain character would, right? And make sure that they can post that response in something like a Padlet, or if you have a Google Slides presentation, they can pop that response right in there. That way they can see and be able to practice that role playing, that practice perspectives as they would as another character. This is one of my favorites, and I gave you an example you'll see here in a minute in your resource room that I'm going to share with you. I love virtual field trips, love them. And we would always, my students be like, oh, like, I want to make sure I want to go here and it's clear across the United States. Or, we're discovering and we're talking about mathematicians and they want to learn about where that mathematician came from, maybe their colleges. My kids were, oddly enough, really, really into like learning where everyone went to school. So being able to have them describe their experiences, after taking that virtual field trip was also a really fun way for them to discuss and to engage in classroom discussions. Amber in the chat said, will you publish the takeaways? So we were absolutely, Amber. Yep, you got it. They'll be emailed to you as soon as we're done. And then last but not least, one of my newer favorites is podcasting. I've recently really got into podcasting, listening to them anyways. And we have some great ones called Listen Wise, and then it's called But Why, a podcast for our littles, right? Our K through 5 friends. I give that resource to you in the resource room, so you'll definitely be able to explore that if you wish. All right, before we head out into our tinker time, let's do some checking in. Drag your dot to how you're feeling. So you're like, Ashley, awesome, keep going, I understand. Or Ashley, I'm a little confused. And then stop, I need help. Great way for us to check in with our students as well. Make sure we're doing that. Not only that SEL check-in, but the checks for understanding, just like we would for any part of our lesson or formative assessment. So let's take a look. And awesome, it looks like we got some more people in our Pear Deck. Ooh, sweet. It looks like most of us, if not all yet, are in the keep going, I understand category, which is great. If at any point anyone is saying, Ashley, like, listen, I'm a little confused, or stop, I need help, I'm gonna give you my email address at the end of the presentation. Feel free to email me, and I am more than happy to get back with you. Thanks for saying that, guys. So we're going to go into our tinker session here. We were going to do a breakout room, but I want to make sure you have enough time to explore as much as you can. I gave you at least, I think, 4 or 5 rooms to explore. So in this tinker time, I'm going to give you the link to our resource rooms that I've created for you. There are icons in there that you can click that are hyperlinked already for you that you can explore. And I've given you one on almost every category that we've discussed today. So let me grab that. I will post that in the chat. Resource rooms. And what I'd like for you to do right now, take about 7 minutes, do some exploring, tinker, find some new resources that you're interested in. In this main homeroom, I give you a link to our link connectivity toolbox. There's some great resources in there. If you're ever interested on Bitmoji classroom templates, that's all the craze right now. We have an amazing educator that we have showcased recently that has created so many free Bitmoji classrooms. So that is also linked there for you. But I'm going to give you some time to explore a little bit and see what you can find. So have fun tinkering. And I'm going to put myself on mute. So if at any point you have questions, take yourself off mute, or you can ask it in the chat. More than happy to help. Robbie, I'm going to answer your question out loud, if that's okay. Awesome. So Robbie asked a question that said, what resource do you use to build or find field trips that would be interesting for math students? So the one that you see in your resource room was made by the amazing educator that I was telling you about. They created all of these Bitmoji classrooms, like pre-made. This is like an escape for her. She loves making them. That came out of one that she already made, and she had done one for all of the states, the United States. Basically, I mean, if you want to use the Bitmoji classroom, there are a ton of ones that I've linked on the front page of, or the first page of that resource room document. You can, the Museum of Mathematics in New York, actually, they have a website, and I believe you can do some exploring on there. They may have a virtual tour, if anything like that. And basically, like what I did was link the icons to the actual website and things like that. So you can go about doing that. Or you can have students create, you know, their own field trip, right? Maybe it's a field trip of, I work with sixth graders, so it's a field trip around ratios. Or if you want to go to explore a famous mathematician, where they're from, things like that. But students really enjoyed being able to click and go, as we like to call it. So that's where I would start. So as we move along here, we're wrapping up. What is your first action? You can answer this in your pear deck. What is your first action step going forward to increase student collaboration virtually or in the face-to-face hybrid and remote environment? Connie, absolutely. Feel free. I specifically designed that for you guys, so feel free to share wherever. Absolutely. All right, let's take a look. Awesome. Yes. Norms and guidelines for discussions. Have your students take part in that. They really would love, they love and value that they can put their input in things. Adding more virtual field trips. Yes. We love a good virtual field trip. Taking a look. Resources. Yeah, there's a ton. Hopefully I didn't inundate you with resources, but I found all of those really helpful. Virtual field trip, live engagement. Yes, Pear Deck can do that for you. And Nearpod too, if you're familiar with Nearpod. Playing around with Pear Deck has a ton. Using rubrics for engagement. Asking students what their favorite tool has been. Yes, they'll tell you. They'll tell you too. And what my kids always loved is becoming an expert on that tool. And then they don't even have to come to me when they have issues or trouble with that tool. They know they can just go to their pinpoint, their classmate. Awesome, you guys. Well, I hope you have found either a new resource that you are interested in diving in and engaging in with your students, or you have actually found a practice that you can use with rubrics and setting norms and expectations and online discussion and collaboration with your students. So I'm going to put my email address in the chat. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help. Ashley Clark at linklearning.com. And last but not least, please make sure, if you can, fill out your Symposium survey. I think that's going to come to you at the end of the day. I'd love to get that feedback from you and how I can better improve my practice. So thank you guys very much for hanging out with me today. Great to be with you. And I know it's probably still morning for you, but have a great rest of your day. I think I saw a question. Do we have to upgrade Pear Deck to use most of the tools? So great question. There are three main things that the upgraded version of Pear Deck can do, which is publish takeaways. And takeaways is what you're going to get from me once I end the session in your email, which is basically your responses, how you engaged with the session, and everything like that. And then the draggable option and something else. I can't remember off the top of my head. Those are the main ones. With the free version of Pear Deck, you can have students type in their answer, respond to multiple choice questions, all that fun stuff. Yep, drawing is one of them. Thanks, Karina. Yes, Amber, the free version has a lot of cool stuff it does. Absolutely. I'm gonna stop share.